Andy, maybe just walk us through how you see this, since, a few months ago, we were asking ourselves, should we do this or not, right? Should we get back into arbitrage, and should we make this investment of both dollars and time? And we knew that the only way it was going to work is if we made some immediate changes. We have 5 that we've made just in the last couple of weeks. Walk us through kind of what you're seeing there, and what it's like getting back into it, and kind of the grind of it as well.
Yeah, so it was actually really good timing that we jumped in and partnered with Steve, because this is the primetime selling season for branded products on Amazon. And, for pretty much from Black Friday on all the way up to December 25th. And even in January, so many customers, they receive gift cards, right, as gifts. So January generally is still a really strong month. And so sales kind of have really done well for us as we've infused cash into it. So the first step that we took is the partner we joined with. He had the business on autopilot. His focus and attention was somewhere else. So it was doing okay. It wasn't doing what it had done in 2021. And that's because his focus was other places. And that's one of the reasons he partnered with us, which is, again, when you partner with somebody, right, it's all about, do you trust the person you're partnering with? And even though his business was kind of on a downturn, we knew why. We knew exactly why it wasn't excelling like it had in 2021. So the first thing we did when we came in, we looked at what their weekly spend was, and we realized we had to up that weekly spend on profitable products in order for us to meet the sales goal that we wanted. So this was, we partnered with them in the beginning of October. So beginning of October, we increased the weekly spend. They were spending about $8,000 a week. And we said, okay, hey, we need to pump this up to $20,000 a week. And I think that, it took 3 weeks probably, and we started to see immediate increase in sales. Wouldn't you say, Nate?
Yeah, and this goes back to something that Gary Ray teaches in the Amazon Seller Tribe all the time, is just focusing on lead indicators versus lag indicators instead of setting sales goal so much on day one. Andy, we really more focused on the buy goal, right? Because we know that the more we spend, if we're making smart purchasing decisions, obviously that's a prerequisite, the more we're going to sell eventually. So we really don't even set so much as sales targets as we're trying to focus on these buy targets. And right now it's at that $20,000 a week. And our goal next would be, what do we need to do to get to $30,000 a week of spend without going outside of our BSR and minimum profit parameters that we have set with the team. Also getting to kind of our next point, without getting too heavy into one specific type of product or category just for risk mitigation. So yeah, number one is we immediately came in and we said, hey, we're not spending enough. Sales, we can tell we're going down because the business wasn't spending enough before that. And now we need to immediately start buying more. So that was beginning of October. And I'm looking right now, Andy, and we'll probably end November around $200,000 of sales in November, right? Which for us, just thinking, when we at this point are thinking of our portfolio of Amazon companies that we're selling, that's a lot to add to our overall portfolio. Another $200,000 of sales in November, and then when you add that to our different businesses and brands that we have, we're really trying to look at it in the whole picture. But we knew to get this to be kind of that cash flowing machine we want, number one, we needed to immediately increase to 20,000. And number two, if you can speak to this, we immediately said, hey, we need to diversify the categories of products we sell in, because sometimes you get stuck and it's easy to keep buying the same type of product. But we were a little scared when we opened the account and started really digging into it. Maybe speak to that and what you did to kind of shake that up.
Yeah. So as a shopper, and so we employ one full-time shopper, generally you do become an expert in certain categories and certain brands, which is good. It's okay. we actually recommend that and we coach people on that. Like, become an expert in a brand, become an expert in a category. When you go in stores that carry that brand, in that category, you're going to be able to scan a lot faster. You're going to be able to identify opportunities a lot better. And so that's what this shopper had done. And he really was focusing on just a few stores and a few brands. And unfortunately, it had become about 70% of the inventory in this Amazon account. And for us, that was just a little too much risk. And so we, came in, we said, hey, what you're doing is good. So he was purchasing profitable inventory. But whenever you're leveraged that high in one brand and one category, we think that it's always better to mitigate your risk by having multiple categories and multiple brands. So we started diversifying our buys. And I believe right now, where that category and that brand was around 70%, it's less than 50%, really within a month and a half. So that's been really good progress, as well as our sales have grown. And so we've been able to mitigate our risk, right, by diversifying as well as growing our sales. And let me just speak to, again, the $20,000 a week number. The way we came up with that is we generally have found, like, if you purchase $10,000 of inventory every week, you're probably going to have an Amazon account that is in the range of $1 million in gross sales. So if you increase that to 20,000 a week, then, generally you should have an Amazon account that's going to have around $2 million in gross sales. So that's kind of a real rough ballpark of where you should be in regards to what your weekly spend is to what your gross sales should be at the end of the year.
Right. So if we want to get to $10 million in annual arbitrage sales, we need to spend $100,000 a week, that kind of 10,000 per million. So maybe that'll be our goal in the next year or two to figure out how we get up to that. So yeah, number one, we instantly tried to spend more per week. Number two, we started diversifying the categories in the stores we were shopping at. And number three, this is something you've been working on personally over the last week, Andy, and that is repricing aggressively. I mean, repricing is tough because I think everybody has there's different softwares. It's kind of tedious sometimes. Walk us through kind of what your strategy has been and what you're thinking when you're like, hey, we just need to, I forget the exact amount, but we had $150,000 of inventory valuation at the beginning of October, I want to say. And a lot of that was old, right? So what do we need to do?
Yeah. So, ideally you really want to keep that churn rate at a high percent. And, unfortunately in the account, again, because of whatever reasons, they just had not done a very good job in repricing old inventory and keeping it moving. I know your and my philosophy is we don't want to hold anything at Amazon longer than 90 days. And so that is like the goal. The goal is always to keep that FBA, the inventory we have at Amazon, churning and moving. We want to try to keep it under 90 days if at all possible. So when we came in, we looked at it, we gave it about a month, kind of analyzing. And then we just said, okay, hey, look, we need to start cutting some of this old inventory. And there was a number of inventory that had been there a year or more. Like, we need to move it. We need to price aggressively, liquidate it if we have to, because the storage fees that we're paying on it are just way too high. It doesn't make sense to hold that inventory. And so, I guess you call it culling inventory, but it's something, that Amazon sellers need to do, even as we build our private label brand. I mean, we look at this on a weekly basis, right? Like what our inventory age is. And so, you have to always be going in. It's really maintenance type work. And if you're doing online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, you need to be looking at those SKUs again that have been there, what we think 90 days or more, definitely if they've been there 6 months or more, and you need to come up with a strategy on how you're going to move that inventory. Either, price it so low that it's basically liquidate it, recall it, donate it through Amazon's program, do something with it, because it's not healthy as a business to hold on to inventory for that long, especially if you're paying storage fees on it.
And I can't remember if we talked about this already, but Amazon just recently announced that in, I believe, April of 2023, they're going to have a new 6-month long-term storage fee, which, and if you actually remember all the way back to, I'm going to say 2014, 15, when we first started selling, I think there was a 6 month and there was like a medium long-term storage fee and then the super long-term, and they've changed it over the years, but they're going back to this long-term storage fee after 6 months. So this is just going to get even more important to stay on top of keeping your inventory in that 90 to 120 day max window for most sellers.
And I'll say this, and it really makes sense on Amazon's part. Amazon does not want to be a storage unit. They only want to have inventory that's going to move. And so, even though it hurts us as resellers, it's really smart of them to say, hey, look, we're not in the business of storing products. We're in the business of selling products. And so only send in, what's going to sell, definitely less than 6 months.